Good afternoon, everyone. I think we've got people still trickling in now, which is great. So hopefully everything's working and the meeting has started fine. I'm just going to introduce today's session before we introduce the speakers. Just checking everybody's filtering in. Yep, that's right. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Food for Thought seminar. I'm Sophie Watson, and I'm part of the Food for Thought team. Before I introduce you to today's speakers, I'd like to remind you of some housekeeping information. As this is a Microsoft webinar event, you can't unmute yourself or come on camera, and the chat function is disabled. But we do, however, welcome any questions or any comments that you may have. So you can post these into the Q&A chat box, which should appear at the top or the right of your screen. And any questions that you ask will be picked up at the end of the presentation sections. Today's seminar is being recorded and will be uploaded to our Food for Thought YouTube channel shortly and circulated in due course. Also, just to mention, we're always looking for recommendations of speakers to invite. So if you have any suggestions, then please let us know at our email address, which is foodforthought@food.gov.uk. So moving on to the seminar for today, I'd like to provide a very warm welcome to our speakers for today, Daniel, Kavita and Hannah, who will be discussing FSA's Official Statistics Survey, Food and U2. Dr. Daniel Mensa is a Food and U2 Research Fellow at the FSA, based at the Warwick Medical School, where he recently completed his PhD. He joined the FSA's statistics team in 2022 and mainly contributes to the production, quality assurance and dissemination of Food and U2 survey data and tables. Daniel's research interests lie at the intersection of the socio-behavioural aspects of eating, health and sustainable development. He's part of the ETEC study team, a cross-disciplinary group at the University of Warwick, developing a digital intervention to improve well-being and reduce loneliness among students via social eating. So hi, Daniel. Kavita Deepchand is the project director for the Food and U2 survey series at Ipsos, overseeing the questionnaire development, sampling strategy and fieldwork for each wave. Kavita has over 30 years experience of in-survey research and has worked on several studies for the FSA. So thank you to both for coming on camera now. So Daniel and Kavita will be kicking us off and there will be an opportunity to ask questions following their presentation. So please do add any questions in the Q&A during the presentation. And with that, I'll hand over to our wonderful speakers. And from all of us at the Food for Thought team, we hope you enjoy the presentation today. Over to you, Daniel. If you just unmute yourself, Daniel, can't hear you at the moment.
Sorry about that. So
no worries, that's great. Thank you.
I'll share my slides again. So thank you, Sophie, for doing the introductions. And because you've already introduced me, I'll go straight into my presentation, which will focus on FSA's official statistic survey, which is popularly known as the Food and U2 survey. So I'll start off by talking briefly about who we are as the Food Standards Agency and what Food and U2 is. I'll then talk you through some of the changes we've made to the Food and U2 project in the last few years, which will then lead me to talk to you about some of the advantages, challenges we've faced because of those changes. And then I will talk briefly about some of the key findings in our latest Food and U2 survey, which is wave 7. I'll then finish off by talking to you about some of the differences between our Food and U2 survey and our Consumer Insights Tracker survey. Okay, so who are we? As many of us would know, the Food Standards Agency is an independent government department established in the year 2000 to protect public health and consumers' wider interests that relate to food across England, Northern Ireland. Food and U2. The Food and U2 is FSA's official statistics survey with consumers, and it measures consumers' knowledge, attitudes, and behaviors relating to food. And so it looks at things like food safety behaviors in the home, food shopping and eating habits, and so on. And it is one of the key sources of evidence that is used to monitor the FSA's progress against its strategy, and it also informs policy and strategic policy decision making at the FSA, and it also informs the FSA's communication to consumers. So when we say it's an official statistics, sorry, it means that like many other government statistical outputs, the food and utility reports are designated as official statistics because they are produced in compliance with the Code of Practice for Statistics. Now, the Code of Practice for Statistics sets the standards for producing statistical data. And all producers of government statistics must commit to following this code of practice. The code gives us the assurance and confidence that published government statistics are of public value, are high quality, and that those or the people who produce them and the organizations involved in producing them are trustworthy. The Food and YouTube project has evolved quite a lot since its inception, but for the purposes of this presentation, I'll focus on the changes we've introduced since the year 2020. So in 2020, the mode of data collection for food and YouTube changed from being face-to-face to being pushed to web, which led to its name being changed from being Food and You to Food and YouTube, which we now know it to be. In the same year, 2020, along with the name change, we also introduced the modular approach, which is to ensure that we have a more systematic and simple way of deciding which of our questions are fielded in our questionnaire for which survey and for which mode. In 2023, we brought tables production in-house. This was hitherto outsourced to our partner Ipsos, but in 2023 we brought this in-house. And in the same year, we expanded fieldwork to include Scotland. And so in wave 8, we are going to see that Scotland will be included in our results. Kavita in the next presentation will be talking to us more about how the push to web approach is used in the field, but I would like us to look at how the introduction of the push to web approach has changed the Food and YouTube project. And so, as opposed to the face-to-face approach, the push to web approach has enabled us to be able to reach a larger sample, which is twice as much as we were able to do using the face-to-face approach. We are even able to do it even more frequently. So that means that we've become more cost-effective by being able to reach a larger sample, which means that our findings are more precise and we can have more confidence generalizing the findings. And it gives us the opportunity to do more frequent data collection. So apart from reducing or removing the cost associated with employing field workers in a face-to-face survey, the push-to-web approach has also helped us to minimize social desirability bias and also allowed us to continue collecting data even during the COVID lockdowns. So we're still able to monitor how things were changing during the lockdowns. Of course, these improvements have not happened without challenges or limitations. Being pushed to web means that we've got both online and paper questionnaires. And in the Food and YouTube project, it's even more complex because we've got 2 different sets of postal or paper questionnaires, which we try to use to replicate the online questionnaire. Because if we translate the online questionnaire into just one paper questionnaire, it becomes so long that it discourages respondents from completing them. So we split the online questionnaire into 2 different paper questionnaires to make it shorter. And so by so doing, we maximize response rates. But this makes it a bit complex and means that we've got more modes, and that leads to more complicated weighting, which will be a discussion for another day. And we also have got challenges associated with self-completion, because people are completing the survey by themselves. Even though it removes social desirability bias, sometimes it's difficult to control how people are using the questionnaire. But we believe that the benefits outweigh the challenges and the limitations that we've seen so far. The modular approach. So this is essentially a strategy we took to categorize our bank of questions into these 3 groups, so that we are able to have a systematic and simple way of deciding which of the questions are fielded in the questionnaire for a particular wave. So we've got the core modules, which covers the questions you are most interested in. Not to say that the other modules are not important, but these are the ones that are fielded every wave because they are the ones you're most interested in. So things like modules like the rotated modules are fielded less frequently because they are sometimes captured elsewhere, for example, in our consumer insights tracker, and so less frequently here in the Food and YouTube project. So one thing I have to mention here is that if you are in the audience today, whether you are an academic or a civil servant, you can see from this snapshot some of the data points that you can use for your work. So as an academic, you can see some of the data that you can extract from our data set to, for example, conduct secondary analysis and things like that, which we'll be happy to collaborate with you on if you get in touch with us. So now on to some of the latest results, which is our 7th wave, and it is the first time we have produced our data tables in-house at the FSA, which is giving us some interesting findings. So we can see that 72% of respondents are saying about the prices of foods, and this is up from 65% in wave 6, which may be leading or driving more people into food insecurity, and may also be driving more people to make changes to their eating habits for financial reasons. So now the Food and YouTube as against the Consumer Insights Tracker. The Consumer Insights Tracker is sometimes confused with the Food and YouTube project, but they are 2 different surveys that we do at the FSA. So I've talked to you about the Food and YouTube as a survey we do every 6 months, so twice every year, as opposed to doing it monthly for the Consumer Insights Tracker survey. While the Food and YouTube is a random probability survey, the Consumer Insights Tracker uses a quota sampling approach. And so these are some of the differences that there are between the Food and U2 and the Consumer Insights Tracker. Luckily for us, next month, there is going to be the food for thought session that will focus on the Consumer Insights Tracker. So if you're on here, we invite you to come along next month and join the Food for Thought seminar to hear more about the Consumer Insights Tracker. So if you have any questions or want further information, you can contact us using our email address. So you can use your phone now to scan and take our email address. You can also scan the QR code on the left to take you straight to where our data and reports are if you want to have a look at our reports and our data sets. So I'll hand over to Kavita at this point.
Thank you, Daniel. Good afternoon, everyone. And Daniel's going to present my slides for me, if that's okay, Daniel.
Can you still see?
I can't see my slides, no. So.
Okay, I'll share them again.
Yes. Great. Thank you, Daniel. And again, good afternoon, everyone. So I'm going to talk through the methodology, sampling, survey administration, and fieldwork. So they're the stages after the questionnaire topics have been agreed and before the data are processed, weighted, analysed, and reported. So next slide, please. Thank you. So starting with the methodology of the Food and U2 survey series. So as Daniel mentioned, Food and U2 is a push-to-web survey, which is a quantitative data collection method where offline methods of contact are used to invite sample members to complete an online survey. Participants are invited initially, thank you. Participants are initially invited by letter to take part in an online survey of around 25 to 30 minutes. Up to 2 adults per household can complete the survey. And as Daniel said, we run 2 waves of fieldwork each calendar year. So a spring survey in April to June and one in the autumn between October and December. So wave 7 has just been published, but we finished fieldwork for wave 8 in autumn of 2023 and have just launched fieldwork for wave 9. To maximise response, midway through fieldwork, a postal questionnaire is sent to those who are not able or willing to complete online. Daniel touched on this and said that due to the length and complexity of the online questionnaire, it's not possible to include all questions in the postal version. The postal questionnaire needs to be shorter and less complex to encourage a high response rate. So at each wave, 2 versions for each country are produced, and each version for Wales is produced in English and in Welsh. Key modules and questions are asked in both versions, with the remaining content divided across the 2 versions depending on available space. Each responding adult is offered a £10 conditional incentive in the form of an e-code for online participants and the choice of an e-code or physical gift card for postal respondents. So, next slide. Thank you. So Daniel's already covered the modular approach taken to decide which topics to include each wave. Any new content is tested before the main stage of data collection using cognitive interviewing techniques, which allow us to test out new questions, new response codes, or wording changes on a small number of participants to iron out any issues and ambiguities in the interpretation of the wording and identify questions that may not produce meaningful data. In past waves, we've done this for the hypersensitivities module, questions on community supermarkets, the FHIS scheme in Scotland, and for Wave 9, we tested a series of questions around price promotions in Northern Ireland. Next slide. Thank you. So I'll now talk about the sampling approach. Next slide. Thank you. At the start of each wave, a random sample of addresses is drawn from the Royal Mail's postcode address file, which is a database of all known addresses in the UK. The size of the sample in each region is aimed to provide 2,000 household responses in England, 1,000 in Wales, and 1,000 in Northern Ireland, so 4,000 responding households in total. Wales and Northern Ireland are therefore overrepresented in the sample. The samples are drawn in this way to enable effective subgroup analysis. The sample is further stratified by local authority to ensure an even geographical spread across the 3 countries. And within each local authority, the sample is stratified by degree of deprivation to ensure a broadly representative sample in terms of income level. In each wave, a reserve sample is also drawn at the same time as the main sample. Reserve sample cases are held back and only issued if we anticipate a significant shortfall in responding households during fieldwork, but having it ready avoids delays when speed is of the essence if we do need to use it. Overall response has been pretty stable at around 28% since wave 4, though varying slightly within each country. So at the start of each wave, we assess the overall and within country response from the previous wave and agree the optimum issued sample size to achieve the total and country level targets to allow for robust analysis of the data. So in order to achieve a responding sample of 4,000 households, we send invitation letters to just over 15,000 addresses. Next slide. So I'm now going to move on to fieldwork. Next slide. Thank you. Invitation letters are sent to all addresses in the main sample. Thereafter, up to 3 reminder letters are sent to completely non-responding households and households where we have had 1 response from a multi-adult household. Reminder letters are sent roughly at 10-day intervals, as this allows time for those who want to take part to do so, whilst giving a reminder nudge to those who intend to take part but have forgotten, or who may have started the online survey but not clicked the submit button. Letters and postal questionnaires to Welsh addresses are sent in English and in Welsh. Next slide. In addition to the information provided in the letters, we also provide links and URLs to 4 other survey documents. A privacy notice, which details how the information collected is used, an FAQs document with information including how to complete the survey and when participants can expect to receive their incentive, and most of these FAQs are also printed on the back of each letter. The Food and U2 survey aims to be accessible for everyone invited to take part and includes measures to meet accessibility guidelines, so we also provide an accessibility statement of these measures. The 4th document is a list of sources of support. For Wave 9, this has links to advice for consumers in Northern Ireland on nutrition, the gov.uk pages on cost of living support, and the FSA's consumer advice on food safety. And these survey documents are also available in English and Welsh. Next slide. So this graph shows the pattern of household response for each of waves 3 to 7. The horizontal line in red is the 4,000 household target we're aiming for. Each wave is open for around 10 weeks, with the option to extend beyond that if necessary. However, we like to close the spring waves by the 2nd week of July and the autumn waves by the 1st week in January to allow time for the data to be prepared and ready for analysis and reporting and to meet the publication date. So we monitor both total and within country returns and review fairly early on whether to issue the reserve sample. We need to allow time for the postal participants to complete and post back their questionnaire, and we close fieldwork when our projections show that we are on track to reach the targets. Next slide. And finally, looking at the profile of the responding sample from Wave 7, we found that 62% of participants completed online, 38% on paper. We received an average of 1.45 returns per participating household. 58% reported being female, 42% male. Just under half reported being in a two-person household. And 1% of online participants reported completing some or all of the questionnaire in Welsh. And of the 470 postal questionnaires we received from Wales, 58 were completed in Welsh. We also know that those who complete a paper questionnaire tend to be older, which is another reason why the push-to-web approach with postal follow-up is important to maximise response and sample representativeness. Once the fieldwork closes, the next steps are to prepare the data for analysis and reporting. So this includes data cleaning, editing and coding, merging the postal with the online data and weighting. As Daniel mentioned, we don't have time to cover the data production and weighting today, but would be happy to cover these by email or in a future session if that's of interest. So thank you, and I'm now going to hand back to Sophie.
Thank you, Kavita and Daniel, for presenting your section. So it's really interesting to hear a bit more detail around Food and You2 and how it all runs nice and smoothly every kind of wave. So we are going to take some questions on this section now. So if anyone has got any questions on the section we've just heard, please continue to pop them into the Q&A box at the top of your screen. We've got a few questions come in, so I will ask those, and then between you, if you can work out who's most suitable to answer. So we've got a question come in from someone asking, please could you expand a bit more about the inclusion of Scotland in this work?
Okay, so Scotland has not been on board for the previous waves, and they've only recently got support to be part of the Food and You2 project. So they are going to be included in the report that we're going to publish for Wave 8. I don't know if that answers the question.
Thanks, Daniel. Yeah, that's very clear. Hopefully that answers their question. Okay, we had another question come in around the sampling. So someone was asking if someone would like to earn more money, could they fill in postal and online questionnaires at the same wave, or could the same people fill in online questionnaires in different waves? How do you control the number of people in a household to fill in the questionnaire? So Kavita, I think you maybe covered some of this in your slides, but if you could clarify, that'd be great.
Yes, so we do check. It is, yes, we do occasionally each wave get a participant who has completed both online and postal, and so before sending an incentive and before amalgamating the data, we do dedupe. So we prioritize online responses and remove a postal response if it's the same participant. We sample addresses, so given the numbers and the numbers of addresses that we have in the UK, it's rare that an address would get sampled twice. Obviously, people move as well, so it's unusual, although potentially possible that you may have a household who is sampled twice, although we do limit the number of returns to 2 adults per household. So again, you might have the same address, but two different adults within that household completing in subsequent waves.
Thanks, Kavita. That's really clear. Hopefully that answers that question there. Right, we've got a few more questions trickling in now. One was just a general question around whether people could get the slides. I know we will kind of send the recording around, but is that possible? Is that something we could share with people if they request via the Food for Thought email address, or is that okay with you both? We can follow up on that separately afterwards if that's easier. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we've got a question from someone asking, what is the current UK population and why did the study target 4,000 respondents? Not sure if anyone would know the current UK population off the top of your head.
I have to say I don't know that number off the top of my head. We could definitely find out. We have population statistics. The 4,000 number, I would have to hand to Daniel to respond on that one.
So what was that question relating to 4,000?
So someone has asked why the study targets 4,000 respondents. So I know obviously we've got 1,000 that we're boosted in Wales and 1,000 in Northern Ireland, and altogether it's 4,000. So if you've got a bit more information around why 4,000, I suppose.
I think we believe that is a good enough sample to give us the precision that we're looking for in our data. Yes, and that's representative of the UK population. So yeah, we believe that that's a good enough sample size.
And I just add that that's 4,000 responding households, so it's more individuals.
Great, thank you both. We've got a few more questions, so we'll just ask a few more and then we'll move on. So there's a couple of questions which I guess are more around the kind of design of the questionnaire and the survey. So I'll group those together. One is just a general question around whether there is a copy of the questionnaire available for access by the public. So is this something that's published alongside the report?
I think there should be a copy available for the public to see. Yes. So if you go online on the, I think I'm going to share the QR code again, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course. And if there is a link, we can pop it in to the Q&A box so that people can access. I imagine it will be on the food.gov.uk website.
Yes.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. Tables and reports. So hopefully the questionnaire is available, but we can check that and pop it in the Q&A and follow up afterwards.
Can do that as well. Yeah, so we can put it in the chat as well for you.
Thanks, okay. Daniel. Okay. And then there was another question from someone who's a PhD student from Leeds University Business School, doing food and U2 secondary data analysis, as well as focusing on comparing the gap of what people say and do in household kitchen behaviours. So they're wondering, how could you choose risky food hygienic behaviours to design questions in your eating at home part? How could you make sure these behaviours are quite important or more risky? I'm not sure if you can speak to that, maybe Kavita, or if that's a question we can follow up on separately, if that's easier.
And we do cover many questions around risky behaviours, washing raw chicken, etc. I guess the choice of questions is part, as Daniel said, of the rotating modules. I'm not sure, maybe we could follow up separately to understand the exact nature of the question and how we can answer that more fully.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, we'll follow up on that one. I think we may have to move on to the next section now. There's a couple of other questions. If we have time at the end, we can come back to those, or we can follow up separately afterwards. Just want to move on to the next part of the seminar now, so that we have time. But thank you again, Daniel and Kavita, so much, and we'll come back to you at the end just while we close.